Welcome one and all to another Kings of War battle report. Rhordia versus Ogres. The attack of the giant crab. Yes, as you can see, there will be a giant crab in this undead Rhordian army. As you look at the battlefield there, and if we just go to the next image quickly, you'll see that it's the take and hold scenario, so we'll come back to that in a moment. But as you can see, it's the undead Rhordians up against the ogres yet again. The ogre list is exactly the same one that I faced last time, however, the Rhordian list is quite different to the one you will have seen in the previous battle report. So, the rustling of paper in my hand shows that I've got my list in front of me. Let's have a look at the scenario now. So, take and hold, there are 3 objectives, and apparently it's been errated to ignore the piece of text at the bottom regarding a smaller board because it's quite misleading. So 1 objective in the middle and 1 placed by each player, and you can see on this image that we both pretty much put them as far apart as possible, and on the centre line almost. Not quite on the centre line, but as close as they could physically get, so we obviously didn't want to be trekking too far into enemy territory. You place them on your opponent's half, by the way. So there's that one, the central one, which is a barrel, and that one there. And the way you accumulate points is by controlling an objective at the end of your turn will get you a victory point starting from turn 3 onwards. So if you have a really fast army, it doesn't give you an unfair advantage there. So on the side of the ogres, we've got a regiment of chariots, we've got a couple of warlocks, one of which has the Fenulian amulet for extra lightning bolt, one of which has the crown, which allows him to use 2 spells once per game in the same turn, so he could use his lightning bolt and wind blast. Then there is a unit, a horde of Grokagamok's finest braves, with the man himself, Grokagamok, behind them. Then there is a chariot captain. Then there is a standard bearer with the Lute of Insatiable Darkness behind a horde of warriors, and they hit on 2s, I believe. They have the Brew of Sharpness. Then we have a horde of shooters, and they are elite. Then another unit of chariots there. One of the chariot units, I believe, has the Potion of the Caterpillar, which would be the one on the right, because this one doesn't have a mushroom on the base, so not this one. And over to the Rhordians. So I've turned the camera around here, so this would be, as I'm looking at it, this would be my left flank, but as my opponent looks at it, this would be on the right. So this is my Duke on Ancient Winged Arrowles, and I've managed to get him positioned on the flank in such a way that if I get the first turn and immediately fly 20 inches forwards, I will not be in the charge arc of the chariots over there. So if you're up against flying creatures like this, that's one thing you always have to be careful of. Make sure that you're covering those arcs in the first turn to make sure that they can't land and disrupt your lines, but I'm going to be able to do that in this game, so that's nice. Then we've got a horde of spearlings. There are 2 regiments of spearlings in this list as well, and they all benefit from the formation We've Had a Second Breakfast, which gives all of those units ensnare in addition to their phalanx, and it also boosts their defense to 4+. So it's pretty much a must-have. And the other, you could call it a bit of a tax you need to do that, is include a Master Sergeant as well. And he gains ensnare, and I've also given my Master Sergeant a bow, but we'll get to him in a minute. So there are the 2 regiments of spearlings. Behind them we've got the Honour Guard. Now the Honour Guard in this list have been given the Wine of Elvenkind to make them nimble, because what I've found when I've come up against lists like this, where they have a very, very meaty centre, like these ogres, where they've got just multiple really killer units right in the middle, I often end up surrendering the centre and losing out because of it, and possibly overloading the flanks. So I've decided to put the Honour Guard right in the middle, the most hard-hitting unit, and because they're nimble, they're not going to get jammed up behind my own units. Then, in front of them, you can see that there is a giant crab. Attack its weak point for massive damage. This is actually a battle shrine, represented by a giant crab there, so that has lightning bolt and rallying. Now, it's not actually a halfling unit. It doesn't have the word halfling in the name, so it will not benefit from the inspiring effect of any of my halfling characters. Then, between that and the Iron Beast that you can see there, there is a halfling standard bearer, and he has the Loot of Insatiable Darkness. Oh, by the way, the horde of Spearlings that we passed over a minute ago, they've also got the Hammer of Measured Force, which I think I totally forget that they have during the game, but never mind. Then, in front of that Standard Bearer, there is a Halfling Sorcerer, and he has Lightning Bolt, so that's in addition to his Wind Blast. In front of the Iron Beast, you can see the Master Sergeant there, so he's got a bow. He's quite handy, he's got Elite. Then you can see a regiment of archers, a horde of archers. In front of them, another Standard Bearer, this one mounted with the Diadem of Dragonkind, and there are some Halfling Knights over there on the flank. So, I'm kind of directing all that firepower into kind of the centre of the table, screening them in a little bit with the hill, so that not all enemy units will be able to just sit behind the hill just out of range and then charge over it. So there are a couple of chariot units, though, that will be able to do that. I've not positioned right on the front line with the archers either, because often I will do that, but in this scenario I don't think it's necessary because the enemy need to come at least to halfway, where they will be in range of my weaponry. So turn 1, and the halflings do win the roll-off, so I'm going to be going first, and look at that, just like I said. First things first, the Duke on his winged beastie has flown up there out of the arc of the chariots, and now he's going to be able to cause havoc. If they don't turn round to look at him, then they will take a flank charge. If they do turn round to look at him, he can fly over their heads and threaten the shooters behind. So he's just a real annoyance and disruption. And in the centre, you can see everything else has moved up a little bit. The Spearling Horde, I have not pushed them up too far, so if they get shot by the Shooter Horde, they'll still have cover at this stage. I haven't pushed them up very far at all. The two Spearling regiments, though, have pushed up in the centre, along with the Battle Shrine and the Honour Guard behind. And you can see the Iron Beast is keeping up with them as well. The Archer regiment, the Sorcerer has moved up, so he can use his Lightning Bolt, and the Battle Shrine will also use its Lightning Bolt. Over on this side, I've positioned the Knights and the Standard Bearer behind the hill, so they're not going to be hit with any projectiles. Also, a reason for keeping the Honour Guard in the centre is that they are quite vulnerable to missile fire, and typically when I've faced this list before, the shooters have been on a flank, and there's also the threat from the two lightning bolt wielding casters as well, so I don't want them getting shot because their nerve isn't that high. They dish out a lot more damage than they can take. So I also want my Halfling Knights to be avoiding that potential missile fire. Now look at that beautiful image of the giant crab, which is a miniature from Reaper, by the way. Most of the miniatures in this Halfling army are from Majestic Feat miniatures, and the Halfling Rooster Cavalry there are from the Assault group. And for anyone who's interested, the Iron Beast is Malifaux Whiskey Golem. So, the lightning bolts do a little bit of damage to the warriors, 2 damage, just making a start on them so I can make a charge on them and kill them off shortly. So that's how it looks at the end of my first turn. Not much damage done, getting into position, and just waiting for the ogres to make the next move now. I'm interested to see what they do on the left as I look at it, because I've got my Duke over there who's going to be causing havoc, so hopefully I can tie up at least a couple of units there for a few turns just by dancing around them. Turn 1 for the ogres. So, Grockamok Braves, the warriors, Grocky himself, and the chariot character have all moved up around that house, so many of them are within charge range of at least a unit. One of the regiments they're typically going to be in charge range of. I will be able to move all my individuals and anything I don't want to be charged out of charge range, though, because they're only just in at this stage. You can see the chariots have moved up. They're actually within charge range of my cavalry, and they would be able to see over the hill. So all I'll have to do is just pull those units back a little bit to avoid being charged next turn. The shooters, what do? Well, they put 3 damage onto the Battle Shrine. Then the double lightning bolt. They get it up to 7 damage, and it's only got a nerve of 14, and as I said, none of the inspiring will affect that. So it's removed instantly in one go. Wow. So what I'm thinking is replacing the Halfling Standard Bearer with a regular human Standard Bearer who is available in the Rhordian list, and that means he would also be able to inspire the Honour Guard and a Battle Shrine, because those units are a little bit vulnerable unless I keep the Duke around, and he wants to be flying off on his own, really. So, yeah, you pay the price there for not having the correct kind of inspiring. So that's gone, and that's annoying because I was relying on that rallying 2 to boost up these units, especially the Honor Guard, who could really use that boost. And of course it deprives me of some lightning bolt as well, taking away some of my shooting ability. So that's not much accomplished there, but you can see over on the left that the chariots have turned so that the Duke will not be able to charge them in the flank. He's not moved the shooters though, so the Duke is going to be able to hop over the top of those chariots and threaten the centre and the shooters at the same time. Then, my turn too. So, this little standard bearer here with the Diadem of Dragonkind, he's not going to be able to use it now because he's had to go at the double to get out of the charge arc of those chariots. He's going to be dancing around and causing a bit of a nuisance with his breath attack there. And exactly what I said with the Duke, he's just flown over the top and he's happily staring into the flank of those shooters, so they can't shoot him, and if they don't move he could charge them, and he may have charges in the centre as well, depending what the other enemy units do. You can see here that my Spearling Horde have pushed out, not too worried about being shot at by those shooters anymore, because if they do use a turn up shooting at them, then they're probably going to get flank charged by the Duke, very possibly. Even though he would be hindered, of course, he would still do some decent damage there, I would imagine. So I'm basically offering him the opportunity to stand there and shoot at the Spearlings, but I don't think he's going to take it. And you can see here how they look in relation to those chariots. I don't think I'm in range of them yet. Over here we still can't score any points, so I'm not rushing onto the objectives right now, but the two Spearling regiments have edged up a little bit, so they are within charge range. Everything else has moved back, so it can't be charged. So all my hard-hitting stuff is staying out of range, ready to jump in there in a minute in the furious counter-attack, including the Iron Beast. Then I've got lots of shooting here, lightning bolts, I've got the two archer units, and the Master Sergeant with his bow as well. And all that shooting, I managed to get the warriors up to 4 points of damage, which isn't much, but you can see I've also pulled the cavalry back off the hill so the chariots on this side can't charge them. I want to draw them in a bit closer. The chariots, I believe, do have the speed edge on my cavalry, so we'll see whether they want to press that advantage. But the longer they take to get into combat, the more I'll be able to get them shot up, especially if I get another turn with the Diadem of Dragonkind there. I'll be able to put some damage on them. My shooting is slightly hindered by this wall being there, which is providing a bit of an obstacle. So, possibly poor planning when I was positioning the archers. Turn 2 for the Ogres. So, they do go in, the warriors and the braves go into that one regiment of Spearlings, so even within snare and phalanx and defense 4 now in the front, they are probably going to die. Even if they do though, that's okay. He's also positioned his standard bearer there, you can see, to the side of his warriors, which means that that unit of Spearlings there, the regiment that's not actually in combat, at the end of the combat, they're going to have to bounce away an inch by our reckoning, because all the other units are penned in and you have to separate units at the end. So if that is the case, then they will not be able to see the flank of that warrior unit anymore, so they will only be able to charge the character. Over here you can see he turns the shooters to avoid getting a flank charge, which means they're losing a turn of shooting, so the Duke is doing his job. The chariots have moved up onto the hill as well, so if I chose to plough the Duke into the front of the shooters, he would likely be charged by the chariots afterwards. Then, over here, he does move the chariots up on this side. He moves them up onto the hill, in fact, which puts them within charge range of my knights, which I'm quite happy about because I'll take that all day long. And he wants to threaten my other units, really, from his position on the hill there. But then he moves them back. Yeah, I think he had them up here and then pushed them back. They're still in range, though, and I think I can see them with the knights, and they are in range of the knights. But it does mean that they're not going to be shot. So I think that was his thinking there. He just didn't want them taking tons of arrows and then turning into pincushions, with his thoughts on moving them back there. Then the two warlocks, they put 2 points of damage on my standard bearer, but not enough to get a waiver. They also try to do something to the Iron Beast, but nothing. Actually, they do get a waiver on the standard bearer here, but he's only got the Loot of Insatiable Darkness, so it's not a huge loss. And the Spearling Regiment does go down, 13 damage, so that was expected though. And at the end, you can see that this unit has to bounce away because everyone else is kind of jammed in there. So now I can't see the flank of the warriors anymore in their line of sight because they're blocked by the guy there. So you can see how it's looking, and I've got my counter charges lined up. I've got the Honor Guard and the Iron Beast ready to go in. I've got all the archers who will now have decent shots compared to they've had so far. I've got the knights that are in range, and the Duke could potentially do something now. So I've got quite a few options here. So, Halfling turn 3. The Honor Guard steam into the warriors that were already damaged and kill them off, and the Iron Beast goes into the Braves, but only does 3 damage, which is, actually does 4, but they have Iron Resolve. So, very, very disappointing. I was pondering doing the opposite of that, because if anyone could take out the Grokkagamok's Braves in one go, you would think it would be the Honor Guard, but I wasn't confident that they would actually kill that unit, and I wasn't confident the Iron Beast would kill the warriors, even though they were on 4 damage. So I wanted to play it safe, I wanted to kill something, because I do have trouble against this army generally getting units killed off. So I thought I'll guarantee the kill, Honor Guard into the warriors, that'll do them. And if he wants to kill anything on the counter here, he's going to have to make it a multi-charge to guarantee it, which means that one of the other units is quite likely to survive. I put 4 damage on his chariot, so taking away his Thunderous Charge anyway for when he counter-charges from my knights there. And all my shooting, you can see the Master Sergeant has moved away, so he's not going to be charged by anyone, but he only had to move 4 inches, so he's still going to be able to shoot unhindered. And together they put 4 damage on Grocky, so that is a good start, because you need to get him chiseled down so you can finish him off later in the game. Then, the Standard Bearer with the Diadem of Dragonkind, he wavers one of the Warlocks, which is nice. That's going to be handy. And the Duke decides to land right behind the shooters, so they can stand where they are and maybe shoot my Spearlings for a turn and then get charged in the rear, or they can turn round and use another turn just chasing this guy around. And the chariots, you can see they're facing off with my Spearlings. The Spearlings have moved up to claim that objective there, so I'll get a victory point at the end of this turn. So there's the victory point confirmation. So 1 point so far. Turn 3 for the Ogres. So they decide to double charge the Chariot and the Braves into the Honor Guard, which may well kill them. And Grokkagamok into the Iron Beast. And if anyone could take down an Iron Beast in one go, it would be him, certainly. And of course the Chariots on the right counter-charge into my Knights. I would hope to survive that one though. One of the Warlocks moves up to the wall, and the other one is wavered, so it can't do much. The Knights take 4 damage and become wavered, which is a mixed result, but I'll take it because I have got other ways of dealing with that chariot unit over here. The Iron Beast only takes 5 damage from Grocky, so I'll accept that. And the Honor Guard take a zillion points of damage and they're just going to die. Nothing to inspire them with. So again, I'm thinking the regular human Standard Bearer might be a better bet in this list. And the chariot turns to face completely the opposite direction. But the Braves do not, so they've actually opened up their rear to the Flying Duke at the top now. So that's how it looks. So the Duke has the possibility of charging, because you can see the shooters on the left as well have actually gone at the double in that direction towards the objective. They're not able to claim it this turn, but they're closing in on it. So the Duke can't actually see them anymore, we determined. So he's going to have a rear charge on the Braves though, and had they turned to face the other way they would have been rear charged by the Iron Beast, so they were in kind of a no-win situation, and they decided they'd rather take a Duke in the rear than an Iron Beast. They do have that objective though, the central one, so it's 1 each right now. Turn 4 for the Rhordians, and the Diadem of Dragonkind, that unit of chariots was only on 4 damage, and I don't do much more to them, but then get a really good nerve roll, so they are dead. So that's this flank sorted. Over here, all the archer units, the regiment, the horde, and the Lightning Bolt Wizard and the Master Sergeant all put their shooting attacks on Grockagamok, and he's now up to 7 damage, so we're slowly getting there. The Iron Beast, if we go back to where you could see a nice wide shot here, you can see the Iron Beast in the centre can actually see the flank of the chariot, because he's height 4, he can see over the ogres, so he is actually going to flank charge that chariot character, which allowed me to then do all that shooting at Grockagamok. So let's just whiz back ahead again. So the Iron Beast kills the chariot character. The Duke steams into the rear of the Braves and kills them, which is nice. So the centre for the ogres has pretty much collapsed here. So it's looking pretty good for the Rhordians at the moment. And the Spearlings go into the Standard Bearer, put 1 damage on him. So it'll do. And you can see what I've done with this unit of Spearlings here. They were within charge range, both these units, but looking at their stats, they only hit on 5s. They've got a lot of attacks, but I was not at all, even with the Hammer of Measured Force, I was not confident of killing either of these units in one go. If I'd remembered that they had the Hammer of Measured Force, then I don't think it would have changed too much. I'm still not sure I would have charged one of these units here, because if I position them how they are now, it means that he can't double charge my unit and still claim that objective, because the chariot's only a regiment, that's only worth 2, and my unit is worth 3, and at the moment the horde of shooters are not within range. So that means I'm claiming it in my turn, and then next turn, if he wants to claim that objective, he's not going to be able to double charge me, because that will not leave the units close enough to get a victory point. So he's only going to be able to charge me with 1 unit. Now, looking back, would it have been wise possibly charging into the chariots with the Hammer of Measured Force? I'm still not convinced that I would have done enough to kill them. Maybe it was a risk worth taking, though. I'll leave that one in the comments if anyone has any thoughts on that. But failing the charge and being charged in the flank by the shooters would have been instant death pretty much, I think, because of course I wouldn't have my ensnare anymore. So it was a tough decision, but I'm kind of sticking with it in my mind at the moment. You can see the overall look. It's not looking good for the ogres in the middle at all. I've actually collapsed the one part of the ogre army that I usually struggle with. So the Rhordians have a lot of units, but 2 of the big potentially scoring units are quite far away from the objectives and they're never really going to make it to them, whereas everything in the ogre army can score. So I am going to pick up a point for this one, because those shooters are just out of range. And I'm going to pick up this one with the Wavered Knights. So 2 points in that turn for the Rhordians. And now we're going to go into the ogre turn. So you can see that the 2 warlocks have moved over and they're going to be trying to lightning bolt my knights there, and they get them up to 7 damage. And here you can see that Grockagamok finishes off the Iron Beast, which wasn't totally unexpected. He is an absolute monster. Then the shooters decide to charge into the Spearlings in the front, so they're not going to kill them, but he can claim the objective this way. He hasn't moved the chariots in, he's just moved them around to the side to threaten my flank. So, it's an interesting game of cat and mouse over here. And I'm sure there are different things that either of us could have done at various points on that flank. It was very interesting though, especially while the Duke was positioned over there. But him coming into the centre has really turned that centre around. You can see that the Standard Bearer for the Ogres has actually run away towards the middle objective, so he's going to be able to claim that this turn. So, the Ogres have claimed that one by having 2 units there, and the central ones. There's going to be 2 points for them as well. So it's all level going into Rhordian turn 5. The Duke decides to charge into Grocky and wavers him, getting him up to 10 damage. Then I've got my knights still just camping there, so they're going to pick up a victory point because they didn't die. I've got the Diadem of Dragonkind there that I can use on those pesky casters. I need to get them killed though. And all my archers only put 4 damage onto that fleeing Standard Bearer. The Spearlings decide they'll go back into the shooters, maybe get lucky, kill them in one go, but no, only 5 damage, so the Spearlings are likely to die next turn. and they don't really have any support, so I'm kind of giving up that flank now. And just aiming for the middle and the right. The right is a bit dicey though, because I've only got one scoring unit there, and I have to kill those two scoring units. The middle is looking fine though. You can see the Spearling regiment in the middle have moved out of the woods now. They couldn't quite get within range to score an objective though, so these guys have scored one, and that's that. So if you look here, the regiment of Spearlings in the centre were about a millimetre out from that barrel. So, wow. So that could end up costing me. Only 1 point picked up there. So the Warlocks do finish off my knights this turn, so he's now going to be kind of free to own that objective in a minute. And the double charge on the Spearlings, as expected, so they're probably going to die. But look at all that. Dun, 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 dun. 24 damage, but double 1. So that could be quite important. So I'm going to have a choice of who to go for, and it's probably going to end up being the shooters because they are worth more unit strength. So with my furious countercharge, if I countercharge into the shooters, I'll be able to kill them hopefully and then get a point for the objective for at least one more turn. And that's how it's looking. So it's pretty mixed bag still. It's really swinging. And at the end of that round, the Ogres do pick up that point for having those two units still there. And this guy is still just within range to hold that one. So, turn 6 for the Rhordians coming up. So I moved my Master Sergeant onto the hill, so I've got the Diadem and his bow to shoot at these characters, but I'm not able to actually kill or waver them, unfortunately. I do waver Grockagamok again by shooting him to bits with all these guys. You can see here that this regiment of Spearlings killed the Standard Bearer, and they charged him. The Duke came up and sat behind them, which wasn't that important in objective terms, because even if they'd bounced back and the Ogre was still within range of the objective, he wouldn't have enough unit strength to contest it. But the Duke was also heading in this direction regardless, because he wants to go and help out the fight on the left as I look at it, because I think he's going to be needed over there to try and kill some units, because Grockagamok isn't going to survive against all my shooting onslaught. And this unit can hold the centre, so the Duke's heading over there. And they did kill him, by the way, so they can now face this way in case Grocky miraculously survives and starts heading in this direction. And the Spearling Horde do manage to kill off the Ogre shooters there, which is nice. So I'm now going to be claiming that objective for one more turn. So there's how it's looking. The Rhordians obviously have a big numerical advantage, but in terms of scoring units, the Ogres are still in pretty good shape because they've got at least something on each side that can score. So it's very much up for grabs at the moment. So I'm going to score for that one, I'm going to score for the centre. So that's 2 points there. So Rhordians in the lead, but the Ogres have a chance to take the lead now. Turn 6 for the Ogres. So the two Warlocks dance onto the objective there, and then just throw out lightning bolts. And then the Chariots do finish off the Spearling Horde, so they are going to be sat on that objective as well, so they're going to pick up 2 for this turn. And that's pretty much that. They don't have many units left, so you can see there's that objective, there's that one, so they picked up 2, so if the game ends now, the Ogres will win by a single point, but they don't, we get another turn. So the Rhordians are going to have a chance to retaliate with turn 7. So here we go, these guys sit on the objective, that's all they need to do. I needed to kill both these Warlocks with my shooting attacks, and you can see I've got one of them up to quite a bit of damage. There's 2 dice on his little marker there, but I could only waver him and I couldn't do anything to the other one. So I can't stop them holding that objective for the end of the game. And look at this, Grockagamok, more shooting attacks on him, but he gets double wand, which isn't going to affect the outcome at all, apart from kill points. And over here, the Duke then charges into the Chariot Horde, who are sticking around to hold that objective, but he only did 3 damage. He needed to get really lucky to kill them and do a lot of damage, take them out in one go and then claim the objective. But as it stands, I was only able to claim 1, and the Ogres are just going to win now. So those guys are just going to stay there. They do double 1 the Standard Bearer they try to shoot, but it's not going to make a difference, and he was only on 3 damage anyway. Grockagamok goes into the regiment of archers and doesn't even kill them, so that was pretty bad. and the chariots put 3 damage onto the Duke, but that's all irrelevant because that's how it's going to look at the end. And there you go, so they're holding an objective again, they're holding an objective again. So 2 points to the Ogres, which means the Ogres win 9-7. Now, if you watch the last battle report, this game was considerably closer than that one, so I'm much happier with this list. The main piece of luck that came up would be the Spearlings surviving on the left slightly longer than I anticipated. I think the fact that I haven't been able to get much killed against this list in the past possibly sent me too much into kill mode rather than thinking constantly about the objectives each round, which is what I normally do in all these games. I'm normally constantly thinking about scoring points while playing Kings of War, but I think I went a bit too crazy for the kills here and took what looked like really good opportunities, but I could have potentially scored points instead in certain situations. Like, you would think it's an obvious thing to do to just take a rear charge when you've got a flying Duke into some Braves and kill them in one go. You would think that's just obvious, but if I just landed him in range of the objective instead, I would have picked up a point, I would have been able to charge other units. I wouldn't have killed the Braves, so they would have gone to kill other units of mine probably, but I would have had a point, I would have still had the Duke kind of out of harm's way a little bit. I would have still been able to kill the chariot. The Braves would have only been facing towards the Iron Beast, which died anyway. So, and then if they turned round to face the Duke, he could have flown off somewhere else, and he would have been there to block the Ogres from scoring with the standard bearer as well. So there's all kinds of things that mess you up when you're too focused on killing things. I'm not even necessarily saying it was the wrong choice to attack that unit in the rear, but there are alternatives that I maybe didn't consider at the time because I was so heavily into kill mode. Afterwards, my opponent was saying that possibly the Honour Guard could have been better deployed on a flank, but I don't feel like my list has enough killing power in the centre for me to chew through most of what he's got there without them being in the middle. The Iron Beast on his own is really the only really fighter unit I don't think is going to cut it against Grokka-Gamok, the Warriors, the Braves, the Chariot. I think it's too much. So I think the Honour Guard are needed in there, but I also had the option of charging the Honour Guard and trying to get a lucky round, sending them into the Braves, trying to kill them in one go, and sending the Iron Beast into the Warriors instead, who were already wounded, which was an option, and if I'd got really lucky I could have killed both units that turn, but if I'd failed and killed none of them, I would have ended up in the kind of nightmare scenario where I haven't killed anything and then everything of mine gets munched on the countercharge. So, tough choices, and it was a very interesting educational experience in my limited time playing the Rhordians. I like this list a lot more than the last one. The Spearlings with the formation are great, really good value. Did I miss the Dogs of War? Possibly, but they are very expensive. And the one thing I'm thinking about doing, though, is changing the standard bearer to a human standard bearer rather than a halfling, so he can inspire the Honour Guard and the Battle Shrine. And this is probably similar to what I'm going to be running for a little while now, at least until I get some volley guns. So if anyone in the comments wants to tell me to get volley guns, don't bother, because I'm just waiting for the Macrocosm Kickstarter for the Bone Fields to be finished, because I've got 3 skeletal war machines heading my way as soon as that Kickstarter goes out. So they're going to be volley guns as soon as that arrives. Until then, I'm just making do without them and using what I've got. I've got a tournament coming up in a couple of weeks, so I'll make a few tweaks before then, but I'm quite liking how this plays at the moment. I like how the army looks more than anything, and I think the bases look very nice. I like the giant crab, even though it got killed immediately. And I'm looking forward to getting more games in. I'm hoping to do another practice game at least before the next tournament, though, so any tweaks can actually be field tested rather than just turning up completely blind. So, I think all that remains to be said at the end of this, well, a couple of things remain to be said. The first thing, though, don't forget to check all the links in the description, including my Facebook group, all the various fundraising, because of course it takes untold hours to make these battle reports, as you know, to sit down and narrate over some pictures. It's just the amount that takes out of a human can't even be adequately compensated financially, but it's a small, just it takes the edge off it, I would say. And don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. Don't forget to leave a comment. And the final thing, good night out there, whatever you are.